What's up everybody, my name is Graham Tuttle. Today we're going to go over the complete guide to your shoulder blades, how to assess how healthy they are, how to improve that mobility and range of motion, and how to strengthen them, right? First, let's talk about what your shoulder blades are. Shoulder blades are bones that stick on the back of your torso. They basically slide around like a mouse on a keypad. They have four main ranges of motion and movements they do, but they really get everything in between. First, we have protraction, which is where they push forward. So that's a punch forward. Then we have retraction, which is the opposite. So you pull those back together. Third, we have an elevation where the shoulder blades come together. They pull up towards your ears like a shrug. And then fourth, they have a depression where they pull down away from your ears, right? Most things in life put us in a protracted and elevated stance. And this is kind of this internally rotated, shoulders are forward, bad posture. It's common, right? So what we want to do in general for mobilizing and strengthening is the opposite of that. So if you have difficulty with any of those, it's important to know which part is difficult for you so we can diagnose that for the mobility and strengthening later on. If you notice any crunching or any kind of difficulty moving, so one side is difficult and you feel some pain or crunching or something feels like there's rocks or gravel underneath there, in general that can happen from a lack of movement over time where things get stiff or past shoulder injuries. I've dislocated my shoulder 11 times, which is why I've had to learn a lot about it. And those are in years past before I really understood what the scapula and how it translates into strong shoulders are. But if you have any type of past injury or surgery, what you get is some muscle adhesions and basically like scar tissue that you have to work through. And we'll talk a little bit about how to work through that in a moment. But just understand that that is something that it is not part of a healthy scapular movement, all right? It should feel like it's sliding and gliding well. So if you do notice some of those things or you are having trouble, the first thing you want to do is how to kind of open up space. There's two parts of this because it's not just enough to create space, you also have to understand what you're doing and why you should be moving in that direction. So I've got a few exercises. One is going to be taking a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball. With the smaller muscles, I really prefer the tennis ball. It's not as intense or firm as a lacrosse ball, so you can relax into it. And you're going to place that in between your shoulder blades on one side. And generally, you're going to look for a place that's tight or really sensitive. That's not a normal space, but it is normal if there's any type of improper adhesion or muscle engagement. So what we want to do is, it's like a very cheap massage. You're going to press into that, keep your body pressing the weight into that, and move your arm around it. So what you're doing is it's a basic tack and floss maneuver where you're using your body to pull the muscle and fascia back and forth over that spot. And you're going to do that on one spot for 3 to 5, maybe even 10 if it's a tighter spot. Arm movements, you move to a little bit different space and then you move to a different space. Ideally, you'll cover that whole muscle little by little. And then there's another space you can do right on the outside. It's your rotator cuff muscles, your teres minor. Underneath, it's a little bit harder. I've got a video to demonstrate that. But you're going to also move those. And again, it's a different movement, the internal and external rotation. But the goal is you're trying to find places where there is atypical muscle adhesions or too much tightness, right? The big secret here is that your brain is telling your body that it needs to really engage and contract this muscle to protect this joint, right? This range of motion, because it doesn't feel like it's safe and stable. So by doing this, all you are simply doing is creating space to maneuver and get stronger, all right? So it's like hitting the door on an elevator. It's going to open up, but if you don't go through it, it will shut, all right? So these work for the scapula and the mid traps, or the things in the back of your body, but a lot of times people have really tight traps up on the shoulder. The biggest go-to I found is taking the bar, and you can just roll up and down that muscle, right? That can get you that angle, and you can turn and get a little bit different angle on that. If you work through those, and again, this is only if you're having difficulty moving it, and that can be past injury or just tightness, what you want to look at is how painful and difficult that is. That is just the first step, okay? Note that any type of self-myofascial release, which is what that's called, or a massage, or needling, or cupping, it does not fix things long term. It is just a short-term, temporary crutch to open up some space, right? And that may be necessary. You may need to do that, but don't expect that you can just go roll your shoulder every day for 5 years and then it's going to get fixed. You have to go to the next step, right? So once we're aware of how your shoulder should work, we're aware of how to open up some doors and create some space to move, next we have to look at the mobility, right? So in general, any type of mobility is going to be a guided practice to move through that range of motion. So we have the retraction, depression, elevation, and protraction. We're going to work through those. If you don't have a gym, the simplest thing you can do is lay on your stomach, keep your rib cage down so your core is engaged, and then work through those. So the eyes are where you take the arms and you take straight overhead. The T's are straight up to the side, and always think about pointing your thumbs up to the sky when you're doing this. It helps that external rotation of the shoulder. Another topic. You've got your I's, your T's, your Y's, your A's, your W's, and then your basically where you reach and you pass through. So the video demonstrates all of those, and those are excellent form to work through. Next, what you want to look at is the wall slides. Is an excellent exercise basically where you take your feet about 6 inches or 12 inches from the wall, a little slight squat, and you press your hips, your low back, your upper back, and your head into the wall. Then you're going to take your hands and place the back of your hands into the wall and just slide up and down in a W pattern. If that back comes off the wall, you've lost the ability to press up. So make sure it's all about quality. Keep that back pressed into the wall, keep that chin tucked, and slide that hand up and down, up and down. If you're doing all of these correctly, the I's, T's, Y's, W, the wall slides, you should feel a burning, a significant muscle activation in your back, below the shoulder blades and between the shoulder blades, all right? Those are the muscles we're trying to work, okay? So mobility is all about engaging and learning your body better, all right? You're just trying to get in better touch with what your muscles, how they should move, and how you should feel. Next, we want to look at how to solidify that, because it's not enough to create space. It's not enough just to move a little bit better. You have to stabilize that with strength long term, all right? So again, what we're looking at is taking those same motions we did with the mobilizing and just increasing the load or the intensity. And again, these are smaller muscles in the back. Obviously your traps and your lats are bigger muscles, but everything else going on that moves the shoulder blades and keeps the shoulders engaged, those are small stabilizer muscles. So don't focus on the quantity or the intensity first, focus on the quality. You will fatigue, so break up the sets, do 1 rep at a time, just make sure you're feeling it where you want to feel it. If you don't feel the muscle working the way it should, you're not training the right thing. So we've got a few exercises going through here. First is simple. You can do a body weight, a scapular pull-up. You hang from the bar and your arms stay straight and you pull your chest up. The way your torso moves is the scapula pull back. The arms cannot bend. If you're doing this and the arms are bending, you're using your biceps, not your scapula. That's the exact opposite. Alternatively, this is actually the first step into doing a correct pull-up. So practicing this will have bigger steps later down the road. But for now, just work on hanging. Rotate the hands out by keeping the arms straight, and you will pull that. The higher up you can lift that torso, the better. But start off with a simple version of just squeezing the shoulder blades down and then relax. Next, you can do a push-up, and it's a similar thing. With this, make sure you're really engaging the core, because the tendency is to let that low back drop. If you have low back pain when you do this, you're going to drop into extension, and that's not a good place to be. So keep the core engaged. Arms stay straight. You're just going to let that torso drop down, and then you're going to push back away. So keep the hands engaged, arms straight, let the shoulders collapse, and the chest fall forward, and then push away over and over again. Similar thing, protraction, retraction. Third, get a band. It doesn't matter how heavy, as long as it's not too heavy. You will know if it's too heavy because you'll start to feel your upper traps, the ones close to your neck, start to burn. When you think about shoulders down and back in that retracted state, arms stay straight, you're going to pull and open up. Just back and forth, all right? Again, really focus on squeezing the shoulder blades back. As you come forward, let the band and the wrist go forward. You are protracting there, okay? That is where it's part of the movement. It's not just squeezing back, you also have to push forward. So protract and retract, back and forward. Another way you can improve this and make sure you're doing it correctly is to flip your hands around so palms are facing up. That just keeps you in a position where you are moving correctly, right? And otherwise, because your shoulders are externally rotated, you can't slump forward, all right? So fourth, take a TRX. This is a little bit more difficult because of the load, but you can adjust that by walking closer or further away. And you're going to take your hands and then do the T's, the Y's, and the I's. It's the same exact thing we would do if we were laying on the ground with our arms, but now we've got a little bit of resistance with the TRX. So just pull apart, It's all about engaging, controlled as you pull apart, and then as you let the body fall back down, go as slow as possible. Reset when you get to the top, keep the shoulder blades back in that good starting position, and then actively resist the movement as slow as you can going back down. All right, do that with the T's, the I's, and the Y's, but start with the T's because they're the easiest to do, a little bit more so than the Y and the I. And by easy, I mean you're less likely to fall back into old patterns of letting your shoulders come up to your ears. Finally, you can do the dip bar shrug. Elevation, depression, back and forth, engaging those. Keep the arms straight. Again, I cannot stress this enough. With these, it is quality over quantity. And the most important thing you have to know before all of this is that you are undoing bad patterns. If you're having problems with this, which is probably why you looked this up, you have shoulder pain, you have really bad scapular mobility, or you have bad posture, take your time and understand that you have to unlearn bad habits. That means you have to think about where you're standing. It means you have to think about how you set up for a bench press or a squat. It means you have to think about when you're holding things. Take your time and give yourself that patience so that you can figure out how to do it well. Because if you do this well and you practice it consistently, you will see the return you want, and that will be the best thing, because then you won't have the shoulder pain, your lifts will go up, you get stronger, and you have long-term shoulder health. All right? If you have any questions, I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope it was thorough. If you have any questions, anything I left out, anything you think would be beneficial, leave it a comment below. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to the channel. I'll continue to work through the entire body with this. Hope you all have a great day. Thank you. Take care.